So good evening, everyone. It's very nice to see all of you. So my name is Naomi. Um, I am the tech volunteer and the host for the evening. Um, Welcome, and I hope you're doing well, and I hope you're staying warm despite the very, very cold weather recently. And I hope you get to enjoy the little bit of snow or not, maybe if you don't really like snow. We don't get a lot of snow down here in the south, but yeah, if you enjoy them today, that's great. Before we start, I'm just going to give a bit of introduction from myself. I do not have ADHD, but my partner does have ADHD, and that's how I got involved with ADHD Aware. My role tonight is to manage the tech side from the Zoom side
93 people at it.
for the evening, and I will also host the webinar. Like I will introduce you to the speaker, and I will help with the Q&A session later. If you have any technical issues or if you have any issues, just let me know. Send me a message on the chat box. Thank you very much. Before we start, I want to give you a little bit of introduction about ADHD Aware. So ADHD Aware is a national charity. We are based in Brighton, and we've been supporting adults impacted by ADHD for over a decade. And we are led by volunteers with experience of neurodiversity. We run monthly sessions and sometimes webinar like this. We will give you can access more of our details on social media on our website. Sorry. So tonight's webinar is part of the ADHD Aware webinar series that we've had for several times this year. This is a special one because it will discuss ADHD through a relational lens, as Karen will explain later. We will talk about how ADHD shows up in relationships most frequently, and hopefully you will gain a broader understanding of the couple dynamic between you and your partner by the end of it. I am very happy to introduce Karen here. She is a couple therapist with 20 years experience and a coach with a lot of experience working with neurodiversity for the past 10 years. She's been involved with ADHD Aware for a while. She has co-hosted ADHD Aware monthly drop-in session and recently completed a couple training workshop last week, actually. She just completed it last week. Okay, so a bit of more boring stuff for a second. We have a set of rules that we have in all of our online session. Let me share my screen for a moment. There we go. Okay. So that's give me a second. Yes. So the point on confidentiality, what is said in this space by the participants, not by Karen, stays in this space. So please don't share personal information from the session to outside of this group. And we ask that you listen to each other with respect, as people have different life experience that shape their viewpoints. And I want to reiterate that this is a safe space. We aim that this is a place where you can feel comfortable sharing about your experience. And finally, we ask that you do not smoke, vape, or drink alcohol during the session. You can drink something warm. It is very cold, so that's that. Because it's just the same rules that we have in our in-person meetings. We don't allow smoking, vaping, or drink or alcohol during our in-person meetings as well. Also worth pointing out that we have set the chat just for you to the host only. There might be pros and cons on this, but this is to help everyone be present in the space together. You can also drop your questions. So throughout the webinar, as Karen share her screen and give the presentation, if you have any question, you can just drop your question to the chat box and I will sort them out later for the Q&A session after Karen is done with her presentation. All right, I think that's all the boring bits done. I will hand it over to Karen to start her presentation. I really hope everyone enjoys the webinar. Okay, Karen, do you want to start?
Thank you so much, Naomi. Beautifully done. I feel very confident with you at the helm there. Thank you so much. Hello, everyone. Some of you will know me and others I've never met. Hi, Martin. Can see you working there over in the corner. Hi, how are you? Anyway, welcome to this ADHD webinar. I have worked with ADHD Aware around couples, relationships for the last few years. I composed and conducted a couples course online for ADHD Aware, and to my knowledge, it's the first one in the UK, and they have championed this since the beginning. I run my own courses as well, but this one for ADHD Aware is still running. And watch the newsletter because there's a new one coming out next year. Okay. So I think any support that we can give ADHD Aware, because they are well ahead of the game, really, really trying to help our cause. As Naomi said, I am a couple therapist, but I've been a couple therapist for a long time, couple psychotherapist for a long time. But for the past 12 years, I've done much more work with neurodiversity than non-neurodiverse. Got interested in it, working in the locations that I worked in as a therapist, and have been speaking and teaching and supervising other therapists over the past 8 years now. At first, it wasn't a thing. People didn't believe it. They just didn't want to hear it. But thankfully now everybody's on board, so we're away. So I'm going to share my screen and we will kick off. Just a word about this presentation. Hold on. Just a word about this presentation. I don't know who's here. Okay, so I haven't been able to, I've given it a pretty general, I've got a general approach to this. So you may know it, you may not know it, but there's questions at the end, so you can do it as you can ask things if I haven't covered them. Now I've just got a bit of a question here. Okay, so I'm sharing my screen. There we are. I did start this earlier. Okay, right. Impact of neurodivergence on relationships. I think we've covered a couple of the things from the beginning, so let's have a look what we've got. ADHD, we've said hello, and I've actually introduced myself. One thing I will say is that I am not an academic. Everything you hear from me tonight, I'm not a researcher, I'm not an academic. What I am is a clinician, a full-time clinician. I work every day of every week with couples, and I think that gives me a bit of a heads up actually in terms of actual hands-on experience. Have a look at this. So just to give you an idea, this is ND traits. All right, quite a lot of them here. I don't think people understand the whole scope of it, but it's quite interesting just to see it on a screen and see just the scope of it. And this isn't even the whole scope of it. As we know, we are seeing more and more dual diagnoses. Clinicians like me are very aware of that. We've known that the comorbidity, or if you'd like, the merging of the two conditions is really profound and complex. And now psychiatrists and the medics that follow it, that diagnose, are all recognizing that. So, but these are the traits commonly seen in neurodiverse people, and they sort of link on. So I'm going to start up over here. Dyspraxia, developmental coordination disorder, all of these things. Kids will get diagnosis of these historically, but they would never go any further. Oh, he's a bit dyspraxic, but it would never lead on to anything else. Of course, now everybody is very, very clued up. And so we can see any of these things that are being flagged in our children or other adults. We know they're probably a part of a bigger picture. So it's quite helpful to see this as it is, just to see the scope of it. Coming down here, ADHD, impulsivity, hyperactivity, concentration, attention. Focus leads into autistic spectrum traits. Sensory differences are obviously shared. Specific interests are shared, but in different formats. Social imagination is shared. There are many, many crossovers between the conditions. Moving over here, non-verbal communication and socializing, which then link into developmental language disorder. Communication, which I'm going to cover later on today, is quite a big issue in our ND community. Coming up, you've got all of the things that we just used to get diagnosed as and nothing more. Dyslexia, dyscalculia, they were never put together as part of a bigger ND picture. These days, if you look at this, you can see that everything is linked, and as it should be, we can now look at a much bigger picture. What's not on here, okay, and that's what's happening now, is the research into physical manifestations of the conditions. Attending last year's conference and this year's UCAN conference, there's so much research being done around how ND is not just a complex brain makeup. It's actually a much more comprehensive physical condition as well. And there will be lots of research coming out there. I don't have the time tonight, but there's lots of, you can have a look at that. I think the one that lots of you will know if you have children is that it's being linked to gut health, but there are many others that need to be included in that. So looking at couples, ND couples can be very, very complicated. When I first started working, the initial flags were that these couples are very high conflict. They can argue a lot. They have a history of emotional lability, and most of the clients that came had sought help before. That's not uncommon now. All right, it's not uncommon, and it feeds into the fact that actually dealing with these couples is a specialist. It's a specialism. It's not just couple therapy. There are added pieces to working with these couples. And lots of the couple therapy that has been, which is focused primarily on psychodynamics and a little bit of CBT, which is sometimes helpful, but the psychodynamic element, that's the history, the developmental history of us all, which is where psychotherapists will start. Where did you grow up? Who were your mum and dad? How did that impact? Has that led to the behaviors? That is only half the picture where ND is in the picture. Okay, and very often there have been problems with that approach because it can trigger a lot of shame and a lot of it can re-trigger some trauma that has gone on as children or as young adults. So lots of times people have left that type of therapy and it's not worked. And a great example of this, I had a client, he'd been in rehab actually all over the world. And I was seeing him, I saw him for the first time. He was referred to me, he came in, and he just said, do you know what? I've done all this work and it's still not right. And nobody had actually honed in on the ND. Now, this was I'd say this was just before lockdown. That's how recent we are, okay? Best rehabs in the world were still not flagging ND. He has subsequently recovered, gone on, and is doing wonderful things. So that's how important it is. But the difficulties that ND has with mentalizing, processing, executive function, it means that a lot of the psychodynamic work is only seen through one lens. It's not seen through the lens of neurodiversity. So the best approach is a mixed model, okay? Yes, of course, you've got to look at the background. Most couples come to me in crisis. And therefore, my first tranche of coaching with most couples will not be the past, it will be the present. Couples come wanting tools to help manage the relationships that they're in and stop repeating the patterns. So that will be my emphasis in the first instance. ND in relationships. So if the couple are both ND, I sort of think, oh yeah, I'm on, great. They're going to have lots more compassion for each other. And actually, that's quite true, because there are common quirks, there are common traits, there are common differences, and they both may have had a common experience of feeling left out or feeling different. So I think it's a slightly easier couple to work with. ND and NT is, that's two people singing from different hymn sheets. And when that has gone on for a very long time, it creates real damage in a couple. And of course, these days, thankfully, lots more people are coming in much earlier. You know, they're coming in just straight away, even pre-diagnosis, they're coming in and they're recognizing this difference between them. And they want the information, they want the tools, they want the strategies and the information much earlier, which is great. Of course, every couple is unique, but I think the thing that was the most startling for me was that actually, if ND is present, there are patterns of behavior and reactivity that are common to every couple. Okay, that's the difference. They are common to every couple that comes in with ND. To a lesser or greater degree, they are common. And so these behaviors and traits can be recognized as a symptom originating from the ND, which is impacting the couple. And the big difference is the psychoeducation around this, which really helps couples to thrive. And they do. They thrive with this type of work.
Yeah, repeated behaviors and reactivity feels very familiar.
Somebody's got their mic.
Karen, sorry, you're muted. Karen, can you unmute yourself? Sorry.
Okay, is that okay? Can you hear me now?
From the slide. Yep.
Okay. There are similarities in the presentations of the relationships. Okay. There will 99% of the relationships I see will have experienced a very, very intense initial merge. There will be this passion that overcomes both of them. They will report a profound attraction and that they have found their soulmate. They really feel that. They feel it really, really profoundly. And they actually get together very, very quickly. And a lot of couples I see are living together within the first year of the meeting. That's how profound the attraction and the attachment is. And that's fine. That's fine. It's the complaint is that actually, did they really get to know each other before they embarked on this living together and then children? As the years progress, the symptoms of ND start to make themselves comfortable in the couple dynamic, and they begin to affect the status quo. And careers and children are often the breaking point. Well, not the breaking points, they're the tipping points. That's then what needs to be, that's when the relationships run into troubles. And that is when the difficulties start. Both parties start to feel unheard, unloved, and lonely. They do all the fighting. They do the fighting around the relationship because the stress is so much greater. The stress on the relationship of careers, home, children, and maybe aging parents, the stress starts to really tell on the couple, as it does with every couple. But there might be a limited capacity to tolerate that extra struggle in this ND couple. And what happens is the mental load may become too much to bear. Now, when I say mental load, I mean the person that is really carrying the load of the family PLC, right? One person may be going out to work, the other may be doing everything else. And there's often this disparity in the carrying of the family. This is another critical tipping point, and when people present, one part of the couple can be absolutely exhausted. the communication breaks down because it becomes loaded with resentment. And again, they start going round in circles because they don't really understand why this has happened. Couples start to avoid each other then and start to live parallel lives. And that causes a sort of a disintegration and a breakdown of the connection and the intimacy. I want to note here the diagnosis, which is, when it comes in, it has a massive impact on the couple. So if the couple is already struggling and they get diagnosed, it can get worse. I need people to understand this, because upon diagnosis, you have three different processes going on. You have the process of the person who's been diagnosed, who is now looking at their entire life through their newly glazed lens of neurodiversity. Every bit of their life is under scrutiny. And that can cause all sorts of reactions, emotional reactions, grief, difficulty. The partner may have suspected this for a long time and may be well ahead in terms of the reading, well ahead in terms of the understanding of the condition. This means that they're all gung-ho and ready to go, and oh yeah, this is fantastic, and relief. Actually, the other one isn't ready for that yet. So you have this one's much further along the travelator than the other, and that it's very tricky, that process of getting them to line up. And that's where the right help is critical. A help that combines psychoeducation, therapy, behavioral strategies, and an understanding of diagnosis really, really helps, because these couples then go into very stormy waters. Okay. Of course, there are many more factors than this affecting the couple, but I'm here for 45 minutes, so I've chosen the ones that I deal with most. Emotional dysregulation and RSD, executive function issues, behaviors, addictive behaviors. It says addictive there. I prefer to use soothing behaviors, actually, because I don't think anybody starts out to be addicted. I think the behaviors are very much part of a calamitous attempt at managing themselves, and they overtake and take control. Communication difficulties, that's one of the biggest areas of difficulty these couples hit. And I've added in self-esteem and self-confidence, and you'll see why, because it really does affect the couple dynamic. So if we go to emotional dysregulation, term used to describe an emotional response, a poorly regulated emotional response that does not fall within accepted range of reactivity. We know that being in the world as an ND is an intense experience. It's really intense. It's hard being ND in the world. It takes a lot to stay straight, to do all the things that it needs to do. And so emotions and emotional struggles play a much bigger part and a much more dramatic part in daily life. Everything is heightened in an ND person. The processing issues, sensory issues, anxiety, depression, physical issues, immune system, sleep disorders, gut disorders, stress-related issues, and many, many, many more. And there is a lot going on. So it's no surprise that it's hard to regulate those emotions that are so close to the surface and triggered by so many different aspects of daily life. Under this umbrella comes rejection sensitivity dysphoria. A new name for the same thing, but it is helpful. It's been named by Professor Dobson, a really good resource if any of you are interested in American resources. He has buttonholed a particular type of emotional dysregulation that is an intense response to perceived attack, criticism, or rejection. And this one is, it's really taken, it's got momentum, this. Everybody's talking about RSD. It comes under the umbrella of emotional dysregulation. Okay, so not every emotional dysregulation is triggered by this. It could just be triggered by heat. But this is, it's very profound where couples are concerned, because the problem is that one half of the couple may have absolutely no knowledge that it is triggering either rejection, criticism, or a perceived attack. So when the reaction comes back, it's a complete shock. They don't understand it and they don't know it. Sometimes there's no reaction, and that's the more dangerous, because if the client has absorbed something and taken it to heart and embedded it. I've been in rooms where people are quoting things that happened 25 years ago or were said 25 years ago, and they have pierced the heart, and they have stayed there for 25 years. The partner has no idea what they're talking about, cannot remember it, is shocked that something that they've said quite off the cuff or trivial, or in a fight and it's been taken out of context, this lands and sits. And it can be big bones of contention and contribute hugely towards resentment. That is one of the biggest issues we have with the couple work, is the shored up resentment. The reactions, either escalation or withdrawal, they're the usual ones, dependent on the type of condition that you have, or the patterns of behavior in the couple. But whichever they are, the reactions are extreme, and they create discord. So the effect of emotional dysregulation on the couple is this: frequent and often damaging cycles of escalation and or withdrawal. They manifest in fights that are often repeated without resolution. Very often it will be the same theme that gets the couple into the ring. Always the same themes. They're recurring, because there's never any ability, even though the deep and meaningful conversations have taken place, there's never any ability to actually resolve the issue. And that's to do with communication. One of the biggest giveaways of couples is these conversations that follow the defense and blame pattern of conversation. The movement to defense from ND is profound. It's a defensive strategy that was honed very, very early on in their lives. And they bring it into the couple and they use it. So anything that if a conversation is around something and it's heard as any sort of attack, the response will be defense. The other part of the couple might try and explain, but again, the defense will come back double, and even blame. And the couple are off on this defense, blame, defense, blame, defense, blame cycle. Now, with any couple, as soon as that cycle is how you can recognize it, conversation over. You're never going to go anywhere. It's just going to carry on. Defense, blame, defense, blame. So you might as well call it quits. You might as well just call it quits there, rather than both of you get in the ring, beat 7 bells out of each other, and then disappear off into corners, because it will never resolve. Then there's the long periods of silence or distance as you recover from getting in the ring, as you recover from those fights. During those fights, if they've been particularly hard fought, there can be a lot of unfiltered and vicious commentary. And this is down to just people being desperate, actually desperate, no boundaries, and overstepping the mark. Again, this can often sometimes be presented as this is honest commentary. It's brutal. It can be brutal and it hurts. And couples should really try and identify this and head it off at the pass. All of this leads to eggshell environments. All of this leads to ultimately a couple withdrawing and leading parallel lives, rather than triggering another conversation that may lead to another argument, that may lead to another hopeless situation. And that is a repetitive cycle. So that's how emotional dysregulation can affect couples. Executive function, moving on, mental process that enables us to monitor and manage our environment. It's a set of skills that enable us to pay attention, process information, focus, remember, start tasks, juggle tasks, plan time. There's a plethora of different executive functions that can be compromised by the presence of ND. And it affects everything: social, political, academic, family lives. I'm going to come in. Here are some of the symptoms, okay, that will show up in couples all the time. There are loads more, but procrastination, you know, that can be seen as laziness, can be seen as tawdriness, when people just can't start a designated task. It's actually a really sad thing that people cannot for many reasons begin a task. All right, maybe it feels too overwhelming. They can't organize their thoughts in the right order to start it. They may suffer from perfectionism, and so actually thinking about it not being done perfectly will actually dissuade them or be a disincentive for them to even start the task. There's a whole thing about procrastination personalities, which you can look up if you're interested. But it's one of those symptoms that causes such discord in a couple because it can be interpreted as lazy, but it's very frustrating because it leaves sometimes very serious things undone. Hyperfocus, that brilliant thing that if we could bottle it, it would just be worth a fortune. Hyperfocus, what does that do? It's really annoying for the partner, because to pull somebody out of hyperfocus can be nigh on impossible. There are skill sets that are required to pull people out of hyperfocus, but it leads to unavailability. Basically, that partner is unavailable to either the kids, the family, the dinner time, the partner. They're unavailable, and that in itself causes great resentment. Time blindness, always being late, never being on time, starts to feel very, very disrespectful. We're leaving at 10 in the morning. No, not ready. Still waiting for the person. It starts to gnaw away at that couple, that respect that a couple needs to be able to function. All sorts of things: late for school, late for work, late for dates, late for dinner, late for everything. Very, very, it's a very live, these symptoms are very live in the couple. They are the things that manifest every day in the couple. Distraction in a conversation, not paying attention, phones, on the phone, constantly distracted, on the phone, constantly in hyperfocus. Not being able to carry on a conversation, not being able to hold a conversation, leading to truncated conversations, truncated communication, distraction all over the place, has many, many, many impacts on a couple. And impulsivity in every arena: impulsivity with speed, money, activity, all sorts of impulsivity, but it can cause real pain in a couple. Somebody driving too fast with the kids in the back, all sorts of things that will come up on a regular basis in a couple, and that is not dealt with. So one of the biggest ones is the communication. Communication difficulties arise from the combination of emotional dysregulation and executive function issues. When a person is triggered in some way and there is a hormonal and chemical change in the body, executive function is affected, i.e. that means brain and verbal ability is not synchronized. So what is being said is not being processed, as there is an overfocus on only one part of the conversation. As soon as the person is triggered, communication is compromised. And you need to just remember that, because what will happen is there'll be two different conversations. Two different conversations will be going on, because one will have stopped at the trigger and the other one will have carried on. Quite difficult. So communication difficulties, monologues, downloads, rants, where there's an externalization of thoughts because the executive function is not working. Inappropriate, unfiltered comments, Tangential changes in the direction of the subject. This is what I'm talking about as the emotional dysregulation takes over. There is a loss of the flow and fluidity and reciprocity that may have been present before. Don't ever forget that communication can be used to seek stimulation through escalations. Never forget that those fights that you're having all the time can be serving a different unconscious need for some stimulation. Again, defensive language, we've just talked about that, how the defense will come up, and it's just, you can't get over it actually. Once the defensive language is in the mix, the conversation is doomed, really. And an inability to read body language, so the communication doesn't pick up on body nuance, doesn't filter the nuance. So it's difficult. Subtle cues are lost. Moving on, so the effect of executive function issues on the couple, lots of practical difficulties between the couple, planning, time management, organization of the family PLC, disparity in the carrying of the mental load, leading to loss of trust, emotional withdrawal, disconnection, guilt and shame, misinterpretation of intent goes on all the time. And I'm going to add in assumption there, script writing, which it happens all the time in these couples, and then actually just exhaustion on both parts. This is not just happening to one, this is happening to both. Always remember that this ND is impacting the couple. All right, the actual couple dynamic, not one, not the other, both, the couple dynamic itself. Behaviors to soothe symptoms, obviously, these are, they will eventually, if they are left unfettered, they will affect a relationship. And there are many of them. Exercise, good. Food, not so good. Alcohol, not so good. Cannabis, don't get me started on cannabis and how it started to soothe the brain, but actually adds into the lethargy, adds into the total shutdown. The lethargy around ADHD does not respond well to cannabis. Harder drugs, cocaine, absolute classic, seeking the stimulation. Gambling, so available and so dangerous because it's there all the time, leading to all sorts of problems. Sex on the phones, pornography, that is profoundly overused, and then it becomes a real problem. And then work. What does ADHD love to do? It loves to work. Absolutely loves it. And practically 95% of my clients are workaholics, which, you know, lots of them are brilliant. It's fantastic. They get great validation. They do great things in this world, but their partners are usually left alone. So they're left feeling alone. So the effect on the couple, illness, physical illness, addiction, covert behaviors, and lying, which leads to loss of trust, money issues, and many more. Confusion, distance, and a lack of trust. And then we're going to come on to self-esteem and confidence. What is self-esteem? It's a developed sense of confidence in oneself, an ability to believe in one's own innate ability to manage and organize oneself. And there's a difference between self-esteem and confidence. Self-esteem needs to be built in order to be able to demonstrate confidence. How is it built? How do any of you that have got children, you will be bending over backwards to lay down the foundations of your kids' core sense of self. Praise and acceptance, meeting needs, listening to your children, positive progression in relationships, getting your children to make friendships, to maintain friendships, teamwork, getting them to involved in sport, family and networks. But all of these can be compromised and have been compromised by ND, all right? Most ND people up to now, and I'm gonna draw a line in the sand, because the brilliant thing that's happening is with the consciousness around ND, what has been will no longer be going forward. Okay, there is too much knowledge in the bank now for the mistakes of the past to be repeated. So all of you with children are doing all of this to build the self-esteem, except most of you who are any age over, or anything over 25, you probably didn't get as much of these things as you needed to lay down a core self. If you don't have a core self, you have difficulty in relationships. So how does ADHD affect self-esteem? Early developmental issues. School days can be brutal, where you're out of step with peers. There can be a lot of dysregulation, which gets people sidelined, named as troublemakers, when actually they're just cleverer than most, but can't pay attention. Teenagers and university teenagers often fall into the habits of drugs just because their heads are so busy, they get so upset, they can't close it down, cannabis being one of the first lines of defense. University, absolutely awful if they don't know, because they leave the structure and containment of home, move over to university, and many people get lost. I just had a client today who knows that he's ND, but actually university has brought all sorts of struggles for him. He is now getting support because it is available. It wasn't available pre-COVID. New relationships, it's very interesting in new relationships because both of you are probably attracted to what you perceive as confidence and self-esteem in the other. So the ND is charismatic, clever, funny, playful, all sorts of, nice things that demonstrate a sense of self and a sense of confidence. Actually, it's a performance. The other is probably very good at life and very adult and very, comes across as very confident, but actually has probably learnt those defenses very early on through some malfunction in their own early days. So both come in with not great self-esteem. I will concede that the more NT probably has a better sense of self than the more ND. So when a couple are attracted to each other, unconscious issues at play, we seek out another to compensate for what we lack. So, an NT would want to play and an ND wants help managing life. That's a very simple couple fit that repeats itself quite often in these couples. And that's it. Okay, it does repeat. It's not 100%, but it does repeat quite often. So the effect on the couple, a couple can thrive with this type of fit until the status quo is upset. So they can, when they get together and they're this beautiful mix, they're fine. When the ND starts to hit, then it starts to get tricky. So the early years as a couple is a simple fusion, and a joint safe base is experienced. And each partner finds comfort, love, security in the over-close and intense reaction to each other. In this stage, the issue of confidence is almost insignificant. The charisma, success, flair of the ND is mistaken for confidence, whilst the NT, as I said, came into the relationship with more. However, rarely a true or permanent state, and it is threatened by the introduction of all the things we've mentioned. Then the couple starts to be affected by the traits of the ND. What happens then is the more NT starts to become hypervigilant. As the symptoms become more challenging, the symptoms of ND become more challenging, not just to the couple, but to the family and possibly to careers. And so there's more challenge within the couple. There's an anticipation of consequence, emotional escalations, all the things we've talked about. It hits in here. The more the ND begins to understand, and this is what is not recognized. As this happens, the ND, either consciously or unconsciously, starts to understand the limitations of themselves. This becomes really very overwhelming for them, and they become hypervigilant and hyper-defensive. It may not even be conscious, but they will become more vigilant and they will become more defensive. And the NT then starts to recognize this and doesn't understand it. So you've got both people feeling very, very agitated and hypervigilant. And this loss of confidence and trust in the other, because actually the test has not been, that they haven't won, the test hasn't been done correctly, that the couple is falling apart in the face of the stress, and you move into an eggshell environment where nobody trusts anybody, and there's a loss of confidence and a loss of trust. That I see, that cycle is repeated all the time. And so it's a double loss. The couple have lost their ability to trust in the safe base of the relationship. They move to disconnection and fear of their joint vulnerability, and they have difficulty with transparency. They can't be transparent, and difficulties with communication move them apart. And the irony of this is that they are both in the same place, but they don't recognize it as such. And the loss of confidence in both themselves and the individual leads to a breakdown in the couple. And that's how most people present. Now, the good news. Every couple has problems, okay? Every couple, not just ND problems. ND have more than some. But every couple is unique. And the fact that we know these patterns and these behaviors means that we've got strategies. Psychoeducation is the key to understanding and change. Couples that unite in the face of the ND and work with somebody like me who understands it, but also understands their psychodynamics. It's no good just going for one bit. It won't work. You've got to do the whole bit. That then you will see lasting change in that couple. And it's with a therapist who understands both, okay? But they have to know couples. They can't just come in and say, yeah, okay, so you fight, we're going to do this. They have to understand what underlies a couple, what makes a couple. But they do thrive. And I see lots and lots and lots of people who actually turn their relationships around and thrive. Okay, so I hope that's helpful. That's it. I'm finished. Over to you, Naomi. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Karen. That was amazing. You are still sharing your screen. Do you want to keep sharing them or want to?
No, I'm going to stop sharing. There we are.
Okay,
I'm going
cool.
to stop sharing and I'm back. Hello, everyone. Couldn't see you
Thank
before. I was just talking to Naomi.
Okay. So, we have like several questions at the moment. I think the first one that we should address is like there was a question of what is PLC that you mentioned on your slide?
Sorry, it's my name. It's a public limited company. You know, families are limited companies. They've got to be run like that. There's a lot of organization that goes into it. Financial management, life management, children management, PLC.
Okay, so that answers one question. And then one more question is there is a question, can you please give more positive benefits of a ND and ND couple?
I think the greatest benefit is that both of them share some of the same issues. So they will understand it. An NT who doesn't suffer from sensory issues just can't understand why their partner won't take a tube. It feels grandiose, it feels ridiculous, but actually they can't get on the tube because they're agoraphobic, they can't stand the smells, the dirt on the tube seems to really bother them, other people bother them, they can't do it. And another ND person might be more able to tap into a compassion around those states. And don't forget, often this is unknown for an NT. They're not aware of the differences, but an ND might instinctively be able to understand more.
Okay. By the way, while I am reading these questions, if anyone wants to send more questions, please do so on the chat box. I will sort them out to you. Okay, and then next question for Karen. Is there a danger that the ND person could feel a lot of blame and low self-esteem if they are the one that needs to make behavioral changes or compromise?
It's never one. And you're going to love this. The hardest work to do is in the NT person who has been over facilitating. So don't ever think it's just one part of the couple. This is a common misconception. Oh, it's me. I've got the ND. It's me. It's me. It isn't. You've created this couple together. It's both of you. Both of you are creating that dynamic, and both of you need to change. So I think it's really important that people understand that, Naomi, that you can't take it on. NDs come in feeling guilty. It is what it is. ND has affected that couple dynamic, but it's certainly not just all left for one person to make it better.
I think I'll read the next one. Karen, there are several that kind of that are connected to each other, I think. I will start with this one. How does one move forward if the potentially ND partner is unwilling to undergo an assessment?
I don't think assessment is the key. I think it's the willingness of both parties to recognize the traits and their part in it. If somebody doesn't want a label, I totally respect that. I mean, they're missing out on the possibility of help in terms of medication. But actually, if they don't want that, there's no reason for that to be obligatory. But what is obligatory is that two people need to want a couple to work. So both people need to be on the same page.
Okay. And then what would you recommend for an NT-ND couple when the NT partner does not wish to go to couples counseling?
Again, why is my question? Why? And that would indicate to me that there is something in that couple that has set up the ND as the wrong party. And that again is I think my mantra is a couple is made up of two people. All right. It's not just one person. Not just one person is in the wrong. Two people create that couple dynamic. Therefore, you can't set one or the other up. It is together. And the only way anything will improve is if that you unite and see that and start working together.
Thank you. Let me sort more. Okay. With ongoing relationships, what do you recommend for couples to stop sliding backwards into old bad habits?
Yeah, so I've got this. I'm very big on couple deals. I think people don't communicate enough. They don't organize themselves enough. So for me, with a couple, I like yearly couple deals. I like yearly reviews. I like people to sit down and say, what did we actually achieve? Did we manage that? Are we better than we were a year ago? What do we want to do next? Couple deal. Who's doing what? What are our roles? How have we fulfilled them, or have we disappointed each other? Have we set up disappointment or hopelessness in the couple? I don't think couples just happen, especially not in this environment where we are facing just so much difficulty for families and couples. They don't just happen. So I think checking in and actually being honest about, well, right, where is this couple? So this started when I started doing prenuptial work years ago in Canary Wharf, which was fun. But that idea that couples, got together and actually thought about, all right, so you'd have two high flyers. Okay, whose career is going to take the hit when we have kids? How's this going to work? What's going to happen? And that sort of stuff, that just doesn't happen. Well, it does. And then it leads to all sorts of misunderstandings, disappointments, anger, frustration, resentment. These things need to be talked about. The best couples are the ones that do it, that do those, that get together, sort out their roles, decide where they're going and what they want, and make that message clear to the other. Nobody's psychic. And I think we do think that because we're in a couple, the other needs to be able to read our minds. It doesn't work like that. And I think the other assumption is that that your partner is exactly the same as you. Another bad assumption, because there's realms of distance. So the more open the lines of communication, the more honest, and the more this happens, the better your relationship.
Okay. I think that answers this question, but maybe you want to add something. So this question is, considering the financial cost of therapy, what are other ways of gaining the strategies needed to resolve the issues caused by ND relationships?
There's books out there now. There are books, there are websites, there are people who are doing online. I do an online course, so which is much cheaper than therapy. All right. My course offers that because not everybody can actually work with me these days. And so that's my bit that I offer. That ADHD Aware are going to be offering couples courses on a more regular basis. So that does open up another tranche of availability and possibility. And you just got to look around for that, or look at Melissa Orlov. Her book is still the best book around couples. Okay, Thriving with ADHD. It's still up there in my opinion.
Okay. Next one. A number of the coping or management strategies that I found involve space from the ND partner and engaging in your own interests as the NT partner. Do you have any strategies the couple can do together? Because this person really value quality time, and all of the advice is telling this person to have space from their partner.
Okay, so it's absolutely right. And this is what I said earlier about the NT partner. The NT partner becomes over close and lives in response to the ND partner. The ND partner is living in response as well, but that's out of fear. The NT partner is living in response because they are worried that things are not going to get done. They're over facilitating, they're covering, they're thinking that's not going to get done. I've got to make sure that's done. So that it can very often feel very controlling and intrusive for the ND. What needs to happen is that the people need to separate. Like in any relationship, the magic thing is autonomy versus interdependence. You can't have a relationship if both of you are not autonomous, and then you come together, because you can't have a relationship unless it's interdependent. Otherwise, you're just mates. You have a shared vulnerability, a shared dependence is part of a couple, but you move between the two positions. You don't have to be like that all the time or like that all the time. And it's getting the dance right. That's the thing. Get the dance right.
Okay. Let me pick the next one. This is a simple one. I think, Karen, there was a question I think you mentioned it on your slide. What do you mean by monologues, downloads, rants? That one that you pointed out in your slide.
There is a tendency for ND to externalize, okay, to get stuff out. It needs to clear the head sometimes. And so conversation then turns into what can be a monologue. And the partner can often just disengage at that point. It's too complicated. It goes on. It's not reciprocal. All right. It's not reciprocal. What it is a desperate attempt to clarify the thoughts and get them out there. That's but what it closes down is reciprocity.
Okay. Earlier we discussed like what's the benefit of ND and NT couple. Now there's a question, are there any benefits of having an ND and NT couple?
If you love each other, it doesn't matter, does it? There's benefits to everybody. That's what couples are. They fall in love and they are. And so, yeah, you've just got to make, doesn't any couple want to play to its strengths? So NT has one set of strengths, ND has another set of strengths. Harness them. You've got two different sets of strengths. Why wouldn't that be a good thing?
That's so nice. Okay. Next one. What advice would you give for a couple where phone ND addiction is an issue?
Yeah. stop it. But how do you stop it? You can only do it. It's a real problem, the phone, real problem. It's constant stimulation. It's, there have to be rules around it. There's that wonderful books, isn't there? What's it called? The Detox something. And you literally have to manage. But again, both of you have to recognize the damage that is doing to your connection. The damage is profound. So why, as a couple, are you not working towards getting that phone off the table, getting that phone out of the bedroom, getting that phone locked up for a couple of hours every day? That's the only way this is going to work. And everybody's talking about it now. Everybody's talking about phone hygiene in the way that everybody's talking about sleep hygiene. These things have to be addressed. They won't just happen. And it's hard. I mean, even if I put my phone down for a couple of hours, well, where's that? It's hard for anyone, even harder for an ND because of the complete cycle of stimulation. But again, if you look at the negatives, the unavailability, the distraction, the exhaustion, the distance it's setting up between a couple. If that's not enough for a couple to start thinking about phone hygiene, what is? And don't feel attacked. Actually, look, if you're spending 7, 8, 9 hours a day on the phone, there's something wrong. Actually, if you're spending 4, 5, 6 hours on a day, there's something, what's going on?
Okay. I have a lot of questions now, Karen, so let's hope you still have lots of energy for them. I am gonna ask this one. So there is a person asking, they are in a queer relationship in which there is an added dynamic around being both women. This person also think that they have PMDD.
Yeah,
What's your
yeah.
thought on that?
You do, without
This is
a doubt.
MD and NT couple, sorry.
But yes, you do. You have all of the added, female ADHD is, I'm presuming it's ADHD, but it may be a dual diagnosis. But we know very, very well that female ADHD and its relationship with hormones is so combined. So PMMD is a fact of life for many, many women with ADHD. And it's brutal. It's brutal on them. It's brutal on the couple. But again, it's another thing that needs to be navigated. And there's lots of stuff. There's a fantastic woman who's doing loads of research on this. I'll put it in the chat. Sandra Kuji, K-O-O-J-I. Actually, Naomi, would you put that in? And she's doing really fabulous research around PMMD, women, and female ADHD.
Can you
So
spell
yeah,
it again? Sorry, Sandra.
Kuji, K-O-O-J-I.
Okay. Sending that to everyone. Okay. That one. Okay. Next question, Karen.
Yeah, go ahead.
Is an extreme presentation of inattentive ADHD a valid reason to not carry half of the mental load in the couple? Like, is it hard for them to just do it?
So if we're thinking about a couple, that couple has to negotiate, don't they? Because what have I said consistently? Unite and play to the strengths. And it may be that some people can't. They can't manage some of the PLC stuff. Yes, I agree. But again, I don't think it can be used as an excuse, but playing to your strengths and weaknesses, and a couple has to understand its mutual weaknesses, its mutual vulnerabilities. It has to do that. So yeah, there's a negotiation around that, isn't there? There's a negotiation that needs to take place. Like anything, it has to, and it takes two to negotiate that.
Okay. Next question has the topic is about medication. So first question, if the ND person takes medication, will the couple be more likely to thrive? And then in relation to that, is there any advice on reducing the impact of ADHD medication? on sleep and increased irritability.
Yeah. Yeah. If it's affecting sleep and irritability, you need to go back to your psych and explain that that's happening because the titration or dosage may be incorrect. Medication is a tool. When people come in and they don't want to get diagnosed, my heart sinks because you just think you're missing a trick. You're giving up on the medication. All right. Medication does not suit everybody. And it doesn't work for everybody. But for those that it works for, it's fabulous. They will report that some people say it's life-changing. Others say, do you know what? I really like it on those days where I've got to go to work. It really makes a difference for me. It lines me up. Other people will use it every day as a matter of course. They can't get out of bed with it. All right. So it's difficult to know about whether medication, it's a tool in the box. That's what it is. It is not a panacea. It's not the be all and of all the answers, but it is a good tool. And as such, it can be picked up and put down when it's needed.
Okay. Next question. How do you persuade an ND partner to seek help when everything suggested is perceived as just another criticism or attack?
Yeah, that's what that came up earlier, didn't it? I don't know how you persuade somebody to save their relationship, but it's that big, isn't it? If an ND person doesn't want to look at their ND and perceive everything as an attack and criticism, I doubt that their partner will be able to stand it ad infinitum. So it's whether that ND person wants to save the relationship or not. It's as simple as that. Because if they're refusing, then presumably they're not invested. The other thing is that does that ND person understand that it's being ruled by its RSD? See, there's the tricky bit, because that person is being ruled by its RSD, so his or her RSD. So how does one get that person to start considering that their reactions are being ruled by RSD? Because that obviously is what is happening. A symptom of the ND is really triggering and preventing that couple moving on. So it's tricky, but it ultimately the couple will not, that they won't last, will they? Because couples don't unless there's a union.
Okay.
Or that couple falls into dysfunction.
Okay. There's a question that I feel is relevant to your answer. Sorry. It's in your view, what are the signs that it is time to leave a relationship instead of trying to save it?
Oh, that's such a tricky one. It's really difficult. Interestingly, they have tried, really, really tried. They've used coaches, they've had other therapists before me. They have, we've done quite a bit of work together. But the truth of the matter is that he cannot meet her needs. For whatever reason, his ND or he cannot. He's tried and he can't meet her needs. And with great reluctance and a lot of love, that couple are having to part because she can't live like that anymore. They have tried. And that negotiation around a very conscious separation and a very sad separation, but that was one point where a couple said, we just, I can't do it. She actually called it, I can't do it anymore. There are so many of my needs that are not met, and so many of the times we've tried and it can't happen, then we have to move on.
Thank you, Karen. That was heavy. Next question, we have a bit more. Okay, this is more like a personal experience from a person and the question on the chat box. This person said that they froze when their ND partner talks, and this person tried hard to engage and meet their partner where they are, but their brain just blanked. And you mentioned about executive function. Is this related to that? And are there techniques to train these skills?
Yeah, there are techniques, but what's happened there? If you're frozen, you're emotionally dysregulated. So that's where you start with the. That's where you start. You start with the emotional dysregulation. You start looking after yourself and calming yourself so that you don't get to that state. So you need the tools, whatever tools you've got available. I mean, people are using EFT, bands, whatever it is, whatever you've done, whatever is your ritual, you need to come back to a homeostasis. You need to get back down to a dysregulated state. So it's not necessarily the executive function that you're working with, it is the dysregulation that you're working with in that case.
Okay. Still on the topic about skills, earlier you talked about the skill that we can learn to get through the partner when they are in hyper focus. Maybe you can talk a little more about that, like about this skill set and maybe how to acquire them.
In order to communicate with hyperfocus.
Yeah.
That's the usual tools are around actually the person themselves putting alarms on, but alarms that are graduated over the half hour beforehand. So 20 minutes, 10 minutes, then they've got to go. So it's slowly broken. This is agreed with partners. That's the first one that comes to mind. Again, both have to be complicit, don't they? They have to agree on this. Okay, you're working. We know you're going to hit over focus. Maybe you don't come down. Maybe you just stay there until it's over. But it has to be negotiated. This is where it falls down when there isn't that communication. So if somebody just goes off and is in over focus and then just will not respond, or when does respond is really nasty as they're being pulled out of it, that's going to cause a reaction, isn't it? So it's down to that couple to negotiate. Okay, over focus. What do we do with this? You know, it's sort of a knock on the door. 20 minutes, 10 minutes. It's that sort of warning so that they can pull themselves out more slowly.
Okay. Next one. The workaholic nature of ND individuals is very hard to tackle. Wanting to have time together, but it never happens as one partner is always at work. Work is serving a purpose for the ND person, so how do we tackle this?
Yeah, it is a big problem. I think it's very dependent on. I have lots of entrepreneurs that use my services, and they come because exactly this. But there's an urgency. There's an urgency. They're running small businesses, they're running big businesses, they can't get out, they can't, there's this sense of there is this overwhelming sense that without them it won't run, it won't work, it won't this, it won't that. So the place to start is on that with that person and try to actually negotiate the place of work in the family. Because if somebody's got a consultancy job and they're expected to work, I don't know, 8-9 hours a day, that's one thing that can be negotiated. If a couple have started a small business and they need to be on the whole time, or one needs to be on the whole time, that's a different negotiation. Whichever way you look at it, work can become an addiction. It's also a saving grace. Never underestimate the power of work and the incentive and the drive that it seeks and how it stimulates, and how it contains somebody. They feel validated how it contains. So it's a fine line. You have to walk that line and make assessments as you come along. But the couple has to have rules around it. If they're going out, then work has to stop. If they're in, then that it has to be negotiated again.
Okay. Next one. Do you have any guidance for couples who are struggling to move through a conflict because they are completely unable to understand each other's point of view, especially when one person thinks the other one is blowing things out of proportion and the couple can't see eye to eye? This is an NT and ND couple.
Yeah, you have to walk away because you're never going to get there. You have to walk away and you have to find a different way of communicating. No point. If it's not coming through words, then what about mind mapping it? What about sitting down, arranging a meeting? Arranging a meeting to bring that actual subject to the table. Okay, let's do this. Look, here I am. I've got this, and this. Do it visually. If conversation and auditory processing is being upset through the intensity of the conversation, use a mind map, sit down, do it differently. Use anything, use a whiteboard, draw it up. But anything that gets you headlocked like that needs to be walked away from, thought about, and a new system found, or a new method of communication found, because it's not working. So you don't bang your head against that particular wall.
Okay. Let me sort it out again. There's this question, are ND individuals more likely to go find someone else if they are not getting what they should be in the relationship but don't want to end the current partner having issues with? Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think you're talking about the seeking of stimulation elsewhere. I think that's what's being said. I think, they're not getting the stimulation at home, so they're looking outside of the home. And that, it doesn't matter whether you're ND, NT, it doesn't matter what couple, if that's not negotiated, if you're not in an open relationship, if it's not worked out, then that's gonna cause problems, isn't it, for everyone? Doesn't mean that you can't talk about it and open it up, but what they're doing, I presume, is seeking stimulation. Have I got that right, Naomi?
I read it literally from the person and it was from earlier. Let me try to find.
Did I get
And
that right?
someone who asked that question, do you want to come to the your mic, or if not, that's completely okay.
Yeah, it's completely okay. I just don't know whether I've got the right end of the stick there. But people will always wonder. The thing is, and I say this to any couple that comes in, if a couple are tight, if they're good, it's very rare that anyone or anything else can get in. Yeah. But if they're not tight, anything can get in, anything can happen. So it's about the health of your couple. I think that's the message. And that goes for any couple, doesn't need to be ND. Yeah, any couple. Time for one more, Naomi, and then we're up.
Yep. Oh, time flies. Okay. Let me choose one more. I'm so sorry. There is literally questions are keep coming to the chat box right now still. Hmm. With this one, for the final one, any advice for ND's indecisiveness around big life decisions, like having children or not, when the NT partner is supportive with either choice, however, the NT partner is being affected by the ND's constant changing their decision?
Yeah.
Should the ND partner stop sharing thoughts if they bounce around all the time?
Yeah. Yeah, I think the ND there has to sort of get a hold on themselves and do some really deep diving into what they want. What do you want? Do you want a child without, if you're talking about children, a life without children, could that be? But the constant, you probably need somebody to talk that away from the couple. You probably need somebody to talk that through with, who can help you organize and overcome the procrastination and the distraction that's going on there, the indecisiveness. Probably not best to talk to the partner at that point, because you need to come to some sort of decision yourself before you then go into the conversation. That would be, I would say, sit down and work that out with somebody else. Externalize it, but with somebody else, because you're not going anywhere with the partner. So get yourself organized first, And that one of the better ways of doing that is to pair up with somebody and get some feedback, get a coach or a best friend, you know, somebody, but organize the thoughts yourself.
Okay. Thank you very much, Karen. That has been a very lively Q&A question.
Good.
I am so sorry that that was probably like a lot of questions random at the same time. It's a bit overwhelming trying to sort the questions. Thank you for your presentation and for answering the questions. I apologize to everyone whose questions were not read tonight. I wish we had more times for them.
Can I just say, I
Yes.
post regularly. I've got a website that I'm blogging on quite regularly. All of these issues come up on the website. All right. There's an ongoing conversations, and there will be interviews on Instagram in the new year around these types of issues. Okay, so I am building a resource that people can tap into if they want to, and it's Karen Doherty Coaching. Just look me up. There is stuff around there. Okay. Thanks, Naomi.
Thank you. Before we end the meeting, I just want to say a little bit about ADHD Aware. So the webinar tonight happened because all of your donation. Thank you very much for that. If you enjoy the sessions and our other services, we would love to. We will really appreciate the small donation to help us keep them coming. So if you can afford the price of a cup of coffee, there's a lovely donate button on the ADHD Aware website. So it's at adhdaware.org.uk. But thank you very much for everyone. That's it for the night. I hope all of you got something useful from Karen's presentation and from the Q&A from the Q&A session. Sorry. And I hope I'll see you around for our next events. Thank you very much.
Thanks, guys. Thank you.
Everyone.
Bye.